Polished flooring is becoming more and more out of fashion, and I'm going to explain to you in this video why, okay? I'm Ed, the Parquetito. Welcome to my channel. You know that every week I share decoration tips, updates, and even projects that I do myself and show you in real life. Why are polished floors, whether traditional ceramic or porcelain, going out of style even now at the beginning of this year? I'll explain why. Last year, I did 4 major apartment projects, including, luxury apartments. The smallest one, if I'm not mistaken, was about 90 square meters, right? The others were over 100, even 150 square meters. And in all of them, the clients chose satin porcelain tiles. And look, even before I suggested it, right? You know that I really like and enjoy the satin finish on the living room floor. And for the bathrooms, it's practically mandatory. Bathroom, kitchen, laundry room, right? In service areas, it's practically mandatory to use satin porcelain tiles. Then in the living room, it's more up to the client. Maybe they choose vinyl or something like that, right? Or maybe they decide to use the same flooring from the kitchen in the living room. But in these 4 specific cases, all my clients said, put satin flooring in the project. And that's a really big trend, right? Why? And I'll explain it to you in this video. Why did I start this video by telling you that polished flooring is going out of style? First, this fact, right? This data that I'm telling you. The last 4 big projects I did last year used satin flooring. The clients asked me for it. I didn't even put it in the project myself. And also more and more you see and notice this at events, right? Even on the internet here, the manufacturers are giving special attention to this type of satin floor finish. Not the same attention, care, or dedication for polished flooring. However, if you're looking for, let's use a classic example that you probably know, Calcutta, right? Calcutta model porcelain tile. All the major porcelain tile brands here in Brazil have the Calcutta model in their portfolio. It's a classic. So, you can find this model in both satin and polished finishes, right? Polished is shiny, satin is more matte. And now, recently, for the past few years, some brands have launched a third finish, which is the velvet finish. Okay? I'll translate it for you here. It seems like that's what we say, right? In interior design, it looks fuzzy, more like a satin finish. It's really cool for you to feel the texture, right? It's satin, it still has a satin finish, but it's that kind of satin that's nicer to touch. It can be installed on the floor and also on the wall. So, when I tell you that the polished floor, the polished porcelain tile, it doesn't. In my view, in my opinion as an architect, it's not getting, the same attention, the same visibility as the satin floor. It's because of people's tastes, the choices of the clients themselves. Okay? I think that in my projects here at Arc 7, out of all of them, I'm just going to guess a number, okay? I think out of 500 projects I've done, I believe about 380, between 300 and 400 projects were with satin finish flooring. Okay? And the rest were with polished flooring. And if you're at the stage of building or renovating, it's really cool for you to go to a store, right? And maybe check with your architect what the main difference is, right? There are many clients who told me that after they installed the polished floor, they changed their minds, they regretted it, right? At the moment of choosing, they thought it was spectacular. And in fact, it is beautiful, right? It's not because the satin finish is theoretically a more sophisticated and more commonly chosen floor in interior design that the polished floor isn't as well. It's excellent. The polished floor is a very beautiful floor, okay? It fits in many types of projects. But clients always end up choosing the satin finish. You might ask me why. I'll explain 2 situations to you here. First, the issue of daily cleaning, right? Polished floors tend to show more dirt in daily life. The satin floor, because it's a bit more matte, tends to hide the dirt a little better. Which one is easier to clean, polished or satin? There's no question about it. The polished one is much easier to clean than the satin one. If you have polished flooring at home and say you have satin flooring in some area, you'll tell me and agree that the polished one is easier to clean. However, it's the one that shows dirt the most. It's not that the satin one doesn't get dirty, quite the opposite. The same dirt that falls on the polished falls on the satin. It's just that the satin hides it a bit more, and depending on the color of the satin, it might not even look dirty, okay? So, these are some explanations that make polished flooring in some cases, right? In the vast majority of cases. Left a little aside, becoming a bit less fashionable, let's put it that way. It's not out of fashion. Understand, it's becoming out of fashion, okay? Especially for this year, which has a lot of projects. For example, I'm about to start a project now where the flooring is satin. That's what's in the project, okay? It's a renovation we're going to do in an apartment. The client is going to we're going to remove this flooring and we'll put in a different type, but it will also be satin, okay? So the client will keep satin or maybe choose velvet too, but won't switch to polished, right? So, these are some explanations you should know, right? When you're buying, when you're installing the flooring in your house. Now, if you ask me, do you recommend that we use satin flooring throughout the whole house? Well, as I mentioned earlier, I highly recommend that you use satin flooring in bathrooms, kitchens, service areas, and laundry rooms, okay? If it works well in your design to extend this kitchen flooring, if you happen to have an open plan kitchen with the living room and it's worth it to use the same satin flooring in the kitchen, living room, and even the balcony, it looks spectacular, it looks beautiful. Now, in the bedrooms, I always recommend to my clients in my projects vinyl flooring, okay? I don't like to recommend either satin or laminate, I like to recommend vinyl flooring. And I want to take this opportunity just to summarize for you why I recommend vinyl flooring in private areas, which are the bedrooms. Because it's a warm floor, okay? Porcelain tile is a cold floor. When you step on it, you feel a cold surface. Vinyl flooring is not like that, okay? You have a warmer surface compared to porcelain tile. So, for bedrooms, I will always recommend, and if you've been following me for a long time here on these videos, you know this, that I always suggest and will always suggest vinyl flooring for private areas, right? Starting from the hallway, at the division between the hallway and your private bedrooms, to the rooms, to the bedrooms. Whether it's a child's room, your primary suite, or the guest room, always vinyl flooring and not laminate flooring. Laminate flooring has that little issue that I like to mention, that little problem, right? In my opinion, you know? That way you walk on top of the wood, you notice that little noise, you hear that little noise, right? Even you who have a pet at home, especially a dog when he's running, that little sound of his nails tapping on the laminate floor, right? And that bothers me a little, and I want to pass that on to my clients. I say, look, let's not use laminate flooring, right? First of all, laminate is also a type of wood flooring, but it doesn't have the same resistance to water compared to vinyl flooring, okay? So let's always go with vinyl flooring. And then there's this mix from private areas to the social area, the living room, where you can use either porcelain tile or vinyl flooring. It's up to you to decide together with your client during the design process. But in short, polished flooring is becoming a bit outdated, including polished vinyl. If you pay attention, there's vinyl flooring, which is shinier. It shines more, even more than laminate or satin finished flooring, right? We also have this issue with vinyl flooring, laminate, and especially with porcelain tile flooring. So, as an architect, for this year, the projects I'm developing, I'm going to start executing, and I was also going to create. For all of them, I will recommend, and for sure, my clients will choose satin finish flooring, satin finish porcelain tile, which was the choice for the last 4 projects I did last year. And you must be thinking, hey Ed, did you only do 4 projects last year? Yes, I only did 4 projects because each of them lasts on average 4 years. 4, okay? You know that here at ARC. Here we do everything from the design phase to the final cleaning, wiping everything down, using disinfectant to deliver it to our client. So that takes a lot of time, right? There's carpentry, marble work, glass work, painting, anyway, there's everything, right? All included in the project. So at the very least, if everything goes well, it's 4 months for the project. If something goes a little wrong, it goes to 5. If everything goes well, 4 months is the time I spend on each project, and at most 4 projects a year, if everything goes really well, okay? So, broadening your perspective a bit so you can understand how this whole thing about choosing between porcelain tile and polished flooring works, what people are talking about, and what architects are mentioning and recommending in their projects. Here's this tip for you. If you're going to rebuild or renovate, go with satin porcelain tile, because I'm sure you'll never regret it over the years you live in that home and throughout the renovation, okay? I hope you enjoyed this content. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, okay? Like this video, leave a like, and leave your comment here too, whether you agree with me or not. Polished tile or satin tile? Let me know in the comments. Take care.